Dan Illman, Matt Bernier with special coverage of the 50-cent Pick 4 at Laurel on Saturday. This sequence, races 4 through 7. We've got several stakes races. This is a wide-open sequence with the potential for some nice payouts.
Yeah, this is one where I think if you've got an opinion, stand on it, try to do something, because in other races you're probably better off spreading. I think a lot of these are wide open, and again, this is the middle Pick 4 sequence. You're going to have another just as juicy one later on in the day as well.
We'll kick things off with a turf sprint, not our favorite race, but I think it's a solid race. $7,500 claimers going 5.5 on the turf. I'm going to try to beat the morning line favorite. That's the number 5, Racy, who's 10 years old, deserves to be the favorite based on his most recent race at Delaware, where he earned a 79 Beyer speed figure, and you can make the argument if he runs a 79 Beyer, he's probably going to win this race. I just don't trust him.
Oh, I'm with you. I mean, he's 100 years old. It is what it is. He shows up and runs his race, though. I'll give him credit for that. And there's a part of me, I guess at what point do you just say, oh, well, he's run second or third 20 out of 71 times. He has won 7 races. It's not like he just is, you know, doesn't like to see and get his picture taken. He's won almost 10%. I'm going to use him simply because I think he might just be the right horse in this spot. And I think down the line there might be some other opportunities to take against the shorter prices. So I'm going to use him. But as you said, at the top, not very good, don't like turf sprints, just going to try to get through this one.
I'm going to try to get through it with 3 horses, and I'm interested in your thoughts on the number 13, Alpha Slew, who's been campaigning on the Tapeta surface at Presque Isle Downs most recently. If you throw those races out, we're left with the Jim McKay turf sprint, I believe, on Preakness weekend, where he's 66-1 against Richard's Boy. Throw it out. The time before that, he's in against Hoagie, who just campaigned in the Breeders' Cup turf sprint. Throw that race out. And the turf race before that, he went gate to wire with a 74 Beyer speed figure. I think this is a classic example of a dirtied up horse with big speed, and I gotta use him.
And you know what, you can even go farther back than that. In Formulator, you can darken out certain things that you want. You brought up that gate to wire 74, 2 starts before that, gate to wire with a 79, 4 starts before that. He sat just off the pace and still went on and got the job done with a 72. I'm 100% using him. I think you're going to see the big speed. I hate the outside post going 5.5.
He's got to just go.
You got to go. There's no sense. If you try to get cute, you're going to get hung 7 wide.
I wonder if the number 9, Divine Oath, is trying to become reborn as a turf sprinter. I mean, he used to be a legitimate graded stakes winning horse, capable of triple-digit Beyers at middle distances. David Jacobson claimed this horse for $25,000 in July. He has not done well with him. He's dangling him in for $7,500. Last time out was his first turf sprint in a long, long time. And he came with a good, strong late run. He had a little bit of traffic that day. I think he's going to come with another good, good late run. The problem is he doesn't win.
He's the 3rd horse for me in this spot. Again, I feel like you could really go very, very deep in here and try to catch a number, because I don't think these 3 are slam dunks by any stretch. But I agree with you. That most recent run, he's only beaten 3/4 of a length. I know it was at a similar level here, but it's just one of those things. I also wonder, too, keep in mind, that was at 5/8 of a mile at the Meadowlands. 5.5. That extra half furlong, I think that can go a long way, and I think it helps a horse like this.
So you're going to go 5, 9, and 13 in this first leg. I'm going to go 11, 9, and 13. I will also use No Knock Raid, who has winning experience, going 5.5 at Laurel. 2 starts back, going a mile, a little bit far for him at the Meadowlands. He also had some real traffic that day. Throw out the last race in the Maryland Million. That was just a tough spot at a distance, a little bit far for him. He's a sneaky horse, although I usually don't like these long turnbacks in turf sprints.
Is there any concern that all of his victories have come in conditioned races where it's non-winners of 2, non-winners of 3, and anytime he's faced more open or state-bred restricted, he just doesn't get the job done?
It's a worry, to be sure, but I did like that race 2 starts back at a mile. I thought there was some traffic issue. I do like he's a horse for course at 5.5. Really tough race. If we're alive, we move on to race number 5. Full field of 2-year-old fillies in the Smart Halo Stakes. I talked about my top selection, the 10 Gibby, a lot more on out of the gate. This horse will be my only A. And when we talk about A, B's, and C's, we're talking about the ticket maker for Steve Christ's application, which is available on DRF.com and in Formulator. My only A is Gibby, who I think is the speed for Scott Lake, but I'm using several backups.
Yeah, you know what? This is a race for me. I'm taking a stand.
Standalone.
Taking a stand. It's a horse that you and I both liked in the Alcibiades. For some reason, I don't know what the heck happened with Pacific Gale, but she broke fine, and then she was just kind of taken back, and she never picked her feet up after that. I think if she runs that sorority 2 starts back at Monmouth, she has a giant chance. I love that she's got tactical speed. She doesn't need to have the lead. I think there's going to be some other ones that go in here. I think she sits just off. I like that sort of middling post in a 13-horse field. To me, if she runs that sorority, she's going to be tough.
So you're going to single and stand alone with the 8 Pacific Gale. Gibby is my lone A. I am using Pacific Gale in the 3, Take Charge Paula, kind of the class horses in this race as my Bs. And the Timeform US pace projector for this race has it as a very fast pace. And if Gibby does get cooked, because I think she is the speed of the speed, I want 2 deep closers at big prices. The 5 Frigid Sister, who's a perfect 2 for 2, light on figs, but as a 2-year-old filly, I'm not going to put too much stock in the figs. They can improve by leaps and bounds, especially when they get the right pace setup, and the 6 Caught Dreamin', a horse that also likes to come from out of it for a good barn.
The one thing I'll say about Frigid Sister, if you look at it from a buyer standpoint, she's a little bit slow. From a Timeform US standpoint, she's in a 101 in that most recent start. That puts her right there as far as one of the contenders.
The 6th race at Laurel is the 3rd leg of this 50-cent pick 4 sequence, and it's the $100,000 City of Laurel Stakes. What are you doing with the 1 Tale of Silence, a horse that was just beaten only 3 lengths by Practical Joke in the 8 Challenge Jerkins, and only 2 by that one, 2 starts back in the Dwyer, getting some class relief?
I like him a lot, but I'm not going to use him here simply because I kind of feel like I'm using another one of these, and I just think the other short price might be the right one in here. And at that point, if I know that I'm going to use some chalks in some of these other races, I got to throw one of them out. Tale of Silence down on the inside. He's going to need to work something out. I think I will say, though, 7/8 of a mile, I feel like this is his distance.
I mean, his last 2 figs are head and shoulders above most of what these horses can do, but it is worth noting, after that 8 Challenge Jerkins, a really good effort, Barclay Tagg was considering races like the Kelso, races like the Bold Ruler. He's here in the City of Laurel, and we haven't seen this Saratoga on August the 26th. El Arib's the big name in this race. This horse was considered a Kentucky Derby contender earlier this year after giant wins in the Jerome and the Withers. We haven't seen him since March. What are we getting sprinting off the layoff?
Yeah, you could look at it a couple different ways. You can look at it and say this is just a starting off point and a means to an end to get him into something later on. I look at it and say even if it is a means to an end, I still think based on what he had done as a 3-year-old, early on as a 3-year-old, it's better than what most of these other guys are capable of in this spot. I think if we get, let's just say 90% of what we saw most recently, last time I know, back in March, I think he's going to be very tough.
And I kind of like him at this 7/8. I think this distance is going to hit him between the eyes. The layoff worries me, however. You're also going to use the 6 Honor the Fleet and the 7 Prince of Hempt. Let's talk about him.
Well, Prince of Hempt is a little bit of, I would encourage anyone to go back and watch the tape. I know he's 3 for 3. That most recent run at Parks, though, it was visually unappealing, and I know he won by 5 and change, but it was not a visually sensational effort, but it's hard for me to knock a horse, and I like to turn back as well. Honor the Fleet's just the kind of horse where, you know what, I know what your game is. You're going to need to use a little bit of gas early on. I don't know if he's got the kind of speed to clear off and make the lead. He's going to be forwardly placed. He's 5 for 5 in the exacta at Laurel, 3 of them victories, and I wonder if he's one that could give you a little bit of value, a middling number, 6, 7, 8 to 1.
So you're going 2, 6, and 7 while throwing out the 1 Tale of Silence.
Look, I like Tale of Silence. I've chased him for a long time. At this price, I don't want him.
It makes perfect sense considering he was 39 to 1 and 43 to 1 in his last 2 races. I'm going to, though, use Tale of Silence, the 1, and the 6, Honor the Fleet as my A's, with the 7, Prince of Hempt, one of your A's, as a backup, and I'm going to try to beat the layoff horse, El Arib, hoping maybe next time is the time for El Arib. We conclude this 50-cent pick 4 sequence with race number 7, the $100,000 Safely Kept Stakes. Let's talk about the 4, Dawn the Destroyer, a horse that was graded stakes placed most recently at Saratoga, and I really liked the work she did in the Prioress.
Yeah, she's a nice horse. I guess my big concern, or the unknown with her anyway, I'm very anxious to find out. As a 3-year-old, she's got to run on a fast track. Now, is it a matter of her just continuing to get better here as a 3-year-old with some running, or did the wet track move her up and make her competitive? You go back to her 2-year-old form, she won on a fast dry track. That was back in September, but I don't know if she's quite as good. She's going to be a middling number. I like her enough to use her.
We know that the wet track moved up the horse that beat her the last time out in the Prioress, the Vertical Oak. Dawn the Destroyer to me is very logical, but my question for her is, after she ran so well in the Prioress, Kieran thought he was going to run this horse in the Raven Run at Keeneland, and something happened because you see a 3-week gap in the work tab. This is kind of plan B. I don't think we get the 6 to 1 on the morning line, but in the pick 4 I have to use Dawn the Destroyer, and I also have to use the 13 Your Love for Chad Brown, because other than the test, sort of the signature race for 3-year-old filly sprinters, this horse has done nothing wrong.
No, she hasn't. I'll admit, I've never really liked her, but I think she fits very, very well in here. That outside post, Mike Watchmaker brought it up in the Weekend Warriors segment that we did about this race, that Laurel just seems to have that outside flow. Inside just seems to be at a bit of a disadvantage. I'm using her. I don't really love her, but I'm using her.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm also going to use the 10 in this spot, Ms. Locust Point. We haven't seen her for John Service since, February, I think, down at Gulfstream.
Big speed.
Big speed. She was the favorite in the forward gal. You had a couple of decent horses come out of that Tecalito, most notably. Blah, blah. And then she also won over this track at this distance 2 starts back.
Big fig for a 2-year-old.
For a 2-year-old, I just think that she's an interesting one going forward. If she's ready to go off the long layoff, I think she's one that I would certainly want to use. I also don't believe you're going to get the 8-1 morning line. I think she comes down.
So you're going to go 4, 10, and 13. I'm going to use the 4 and 13 as my main A plays, with the 6, 2, as my backup. And I believe this is a filly that Craig Milkowski talked about in his Timeform US Spotlight on Out of the Gate. Again, I love turnbacks at this 7 furlong distance. I think 2 was just a little bit overmatched last time out in the Grade 1 Spinster, but has run well at shorter distances in the past. I think this one could come running late. I still think there's a little bit of upside, and I think you will get a price on her.
Yeah, I mean, turn back. Obviously, she was in over her head in the Spinster in the wet track. Maybe that didn't help her cause. I think second off the bench, you get that turn back. If there's some pace in front of her to run it, I think she got a chance.
It's a really fun sequence of racing at Laurel. Races 4 through 7 for this pick 4, but you also have the Richard W. Small Stakes featuring the immensely popular Paige McKenney. It's Ben's Cat Day at Laurel on Saturday. So there's a lot of great action. Again, this 50-cent pick 4, races 4 through 7, begins with the 4th $7,500 claimer. That race has an approximate post time of 1:30 Eastern, and we wish you the best of luck.